This is an interview with Sandile Khumalo, who is an advocate in South Africa. Sandile has recently been appointed senior counsel, and that's partly the reason for this interview. Congratulations to you, Sandile, on your appointment.
Thank you, Alistair. Thank
Um,
you.
I'd like to begin by asking you, please, just to explain how you came to be associated with Red Lion Chambers, because you'll appreciate a lot of people in Chambers don't know you and haven't met you before.
Yes, thank you, Alistair. So I spent about 14 weeks at 18 Red Lion Chambers 14 years ago now. So it was in 2006, I think, from around March until the beginning of August. How it came about that I ended up there. So I met Justice Linda Dobbs in 2005. She was in South Africa at the time, and she told us about this program that 18 Red Lion Chambers was running, where they would give an advocate from Africa an opportunity to come and spend time in the UK. So I applied for that and I was interviewed. I was successful. So I got to come to 18 Red Lion Chambers and I spent time with a few of the barristers there. And I spent, I think, 2 weeks at Matrix Chambers and the other 2 weeks at Doughty Street. And then the other month I spent with judges in the High Court and the Old Bailey.
Okay, thank you for that background. I just want to read to you something that you put down in a letter that you wrote to Chambers not long after you'd finished your time with us. You may remember what you'd said. It was this:
Yes.
I do hope that the 18 Red Lion Award continues for many years to come. It's a wonderful idea which can change lives. I don't know if you remember those words, but they were powerful words, and I just thought it would be interesting to hear your perspective now on that, and to what extent your experience with Red Lion Chambers helped to change your life.
Yeah. I mean, Alistair, everything that we do in South Africa as far as how our legal profession functions, we learned from the UK because we are a former colony of the United Kingdom. So advocacy and what it is about, we take that from the UK. I mean, we have adapted it a little bit, but the basics are what you guys do in the UK. So for me, it was helpful just being there and learning from you, especially. I don't know if you remember, one of the cases I attended with you was at a Crown Court where you were defending somebody who was arrested for drug possession or some other thing. And just watching you cross-examine witnesses was an eye-opener for me, because at that time I was very young at the bar as a barrister and I had not been exposed to that level of cross-examination. I mean, people like Max Hill, QC, who I believe is no longer with your chambers, but at some point was a leader of your chambers. It was around the Damilola Taylor trial. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, of course.
And he was prosecuting, if I remember correctly. So I got to spend time with him and attend court with him at the Old Bailey, if I'm not mistaken. And just watching him, you know, do that, watching masters performing their craft at the highest level, it helped me immensely, because I can tell you when I came back and I used some of the tricks that I saw you and Max Hill and other people using. And people were asking me, where did you learn that? And I had to say to them, I learned it from the guys in the UK, you know. So it was very useful for me coming there, seeing that, taking from what you do and apply it in my practice when I came back to South Africa.
Sure. I mean, it fits in with the next question I was going to ask you, really, which was, how has it actually helped you in terms of your career development? You've answered it in part, but have there been other ways in which that period with us actually helped you long term in your career?
I mean, I treated it as a mini pupillage. So I was, I think at the time, 4 years at the bar, so 4 years as a barrister. And our pupillage was about 6-7 months. It is now a year, by the way, because at some point they realized that 6 months is not enough. If you want to become a proper advocate, you must spend a year doing pupillage. So I treated it as a mini pupillage. It was an opportunity for me to spend time with baristas in the UK. I mean, just watch how they interact with clients, how they interact with witnesses, consultation process, the preparation process, and the advocacy once you get to court. So I learned a lot from that. And I mean, I still use some of the things I learned in the UK 14 years ago, believe it or not. Yeah.
Well, I think that shows the importance of the program and the award that we had in place in that time.
Absolutely.
Question that's always interesting, I think, for lawyers and practitioners. What was it that sparked your interest in the law? How did you come to be interested in pursuing a career as a lawyer?
It's very strange because in my family, we only had teachers and nurses. We didn't have anybody who had gone to university and graduated. I mean, in South Africa, to be a teacher or a nurse, you had to go to a teacher's college or a nurse's college. So nobody in my family had gone to university before me. So I was fortunate that in my final year of high school, my Afrikaans teacher, so Afrikaans is one of the official languages in South Africa. My Afrikaans teacher said, what do you want to do when you finish matric or high school? And I said, I'd like to be a lawyer. And she said to me, you know what? My relative is one of the members of the faculty at Rand Afrikaans University. Here are his details. Won't you go speak to him and hear what he has to say? And I spoke to this gentleman and they told me that, hey, we have a scholarship at this university for people like you. If you are interested, apply. So I applied for the scholarship and I was successful and I got to study the law. I went to Rand Afrikaans University and here I am today.
Yeah,
but I can tell you that I didn't think of any other thing when I was in high school. To me, it was the law or nothing. I didn't have a plan B, to be honest with you. I only wanted to be a lawyer and that's it. And thank God I was able to achieve that.
Yeah, I always find that question fascinating because for some people, it seems to have been a calling from day one. For others, it was something they stumbled across. It's always a mixture of stories. So interesting to get your perspective on that.
To be honest with you, I saw lawyers on TV and I said, that's what I want to do.
Yes, I wonder how real it is. Connected with this really is how your career has developed, because the reading I've done about you is that you've become a highly successful advocate in the field of pensions law, very specialist area. And again, it would be interesting, I think, to know from you how it was you came to be involved in that very specialist area. What was the story behind that?
It actually started in 2006. Just before I came to 18 Red Lion Chambers, I met the leading pension lawyer at the time. She was not a barrister. She was an attorney, a solicitor, as you would call them, that side. And we started talking because until then I had done criminal law and labor law. And I didn't even know that there was an area of the law called pensions law. It was just developing at the time. I met this lady, her name is Rosemary Hunter, and she told me that, listen, I'm starting a firm, a niche firm of attorneys, where we're going to be specializing exclusively in pensions law. Do you want to come and join us for 3 months, see how it is? If you like it, you can stay longer. If you don't like it, you can go back. So I asked for permission from the Bar Council, which is our professional body. They said, fine, go for it. So I spent January, February, March of 2016 with this lady. And in March, I came to the UK to do the 18 Red Lion program. And then while I was in the UK, she called me to say, listen, we'd like you to continue longer with the program. So when I came back to South Africa, I didn't go straight back to the bar. I continued with the program. And we started working on various things like writing a book, developing study materials for universities, because at the time, pensions law was not even taught at university.
Mm-hmm.
So we started developing study materials and writing a textbook. To cut the long story short, the textbook was done and published and all the study materials were done. Once all that was done, I went back to the bar And the very same lady started briefing me on pension law matters. And that's how my practice developed. And it has been now more than 10 years.
Indeed. And I noticed that you're considered to be one of the top specialists in the country in this field. You've co-authored the leading textbook as well, I think, on pensions law in South Africa. So you've clearly made this area of law your own. And it's a fascinating story. I think you're also involved, are you not, in training advocates who are interested in pursuing a career in that area of law?
Yeah.
And
well, let me tell you, I mean, at the bar, there's probably only 3 or 4 people who are specialist pension lawyers. So we're trying to get more young people involved because there's a lot of work in that area. There's a lot of opportunities in that area. There just is not a lot of practitioners who are practicing in that area. So what I've done is to do for the young guys what that lady did for me 14 years ago, just to get them involved, to introduce them to clients, to introduce them to solicitors so that they can get work and develop in this area.
Indeed, very important work, if I may say so.
Thank you.
We've discussed your journey and how successful you've been. It's always interesting, I think, to know a bit more about the challenges that you may have had to overcome along the way. Are there any stories that you can share with us in relation to those challenges?
I mean, look, the big challenge for me was the first 4 years because I joined the bar straight from university. I did not know any solicitors. I did not know any clients, I did not even know where this thing was going to go. So I was like, a fish in the middle of the sea, just hoping that something great will happen. And I was fortunate that it did, In our country, when you start as an advocate, there's not a lot of support. I mean, you trust that your senior colleagues will help you, but that help is not always there. So you're really taking a risk going into this profession, hoping that things will work out. And to be honest with you, for a lot of people, things do not work out. So I was one of the lucky ones that after some time, things worked out and some of my senior colleagues came to my assistance and I've developed to where I am today.
Indeed. And again, sorry to interrupt you, I come back to the letter that you kindly wrote to us after you returned to South Africa. You remarked that you found it interesting that we have a chamber structure over here, whereby as a barrister you have support, administrative support. You can obviously lean on colleagues within chambers. And you said in your letter, I have to go out and do all of the marketing myself. In other words, you have to build everything yourself. So it seems to be a very different situation for you, really, in terms of how you build a career in South Africa from how you would build it as a barrister here in the UK. You don't have the same infrastructure. Is that a fair summary of how it was?
That's the challenge I was talking about. So you don't have management of the group looking after the members of the group. You are a self-employed individual. Our group structure, you are only in a group because you share expenses. So you share expenses for the building and the general maintenance. Those are the expenses you share. But as far as getting work, you have to get work for yourself. I mean, when solicitors come, they come to you as an individual. They don't come to the group. And so you have to market yourself, you have to make yourself known. And even when it comes to solicitors having to pay your fees, you have to do that yourself. The group does not get involved in that process at all. So those are some of the challenges when you were asking me about challenges, that when you start, you have to deal with those challenges. But once you are more senior and more established, I mean, you don't have to deal with those problems anymore because pretty much everybody knows you and they know that in this area of the law, if I want assistance from a barrister, there's those 4 guys and I can just pick from the list of 4.
Sure. Let's keep with the subject of challenges because, of course, the entire world is having to deal with the challenge of the COVID-19 crisis, which has had an impact here in the UK, obviously, and everywhere else. And I'm just interested to hear from you what impact the virus has had on the justice system in South Africa.
Well, I mean, the courts have been closed for the past 3 months. So everything is done online. I mean, I was just reading this morning in the news, a very big criminal case could not take place because some of the staff members in the court tested positive for COVID, and the entire court building had to be shut down. So that's the reality, that for the past 3 months, we have not been able to go to court. Everything is done online. And it's a bit difficult because, as you know, lawyers, we are paper people. We prefer to look at a file and address a judge. And if you have to argue with your opponent, they are next to you, you can even look at them and argue. So it's been challenging because these days your opponent is sitting 20 kilometers away from you in his study room. You are sitting in your study room. There's hardly any interaction between the two of you, because I'm sure you would know, when you speak, your opponent is muted. He could be swearing at you, you won't even hear that. And, everybody's muted except the person who's speaking. So it has been a challenge and it's been a bit strange. But for the practice as a whole, I mean, the biggest challenge has been, once you get to the level where I am, you work with juniors. So those members of the bar who are younger than you or just behind you. But because everybody's working from home and we must socially distance, it has impacted that relationship. You cannot work with them, you cannot assist them, and you cannot do the things that you would usually do if you were in chambers. Because, for example, if you were in chambers, they could knock at your door and come in and sit down and say, hey, I've got this problem. How do you think I should address this issue and that issue? But because everybody's at home, I mean, that line of communication and that relationship has been cut off.
Sure. Do you see some of the changes remaining, or do you think we will get back to a point where everything goes back to how it was? Because a lot of people are saying, well, actually, I quite like these remote hearings. I wouldn't mind more of this. How do you see it from your side?
Well, I don't like the remote hearings because I've just taken silk. So I'd like to wear my gown and, walk around court so that people can see me.
That's fair enough.
Look, I mean, I've enjoyed virtual hearings. The fact that I don't have to drive an hour to go to court in Pretoria, or I don't have to drive to central Johannesburg and find parking and walk into court. I mean, the nice thing about being at home, I can wake up at 8 o'clock, only get ready at 9 o'clock, and at 5 to 10, I switch on my computer. We have a virtual hearing. So that's convenient and that's nice. But I doubt that that will continue once things get back to normal, hopefully, when they get back to normal.
Yeah, I think you're right. One other major event that we've all been watching and listening to over the last few weeks is the Black Lives Matter campaign. And I'm interested to know what the reaction has been in South Africa to that movement, and specifically to the death of George Floyd.
Look, most of the reaction has been online, and I think it has to do with COVID, because we've been on a strict lockdown since, I think, the 26th of March. You couldn't even buy alcohol or cigarettes for 2 months in South Africa. I think you were allowed to buy alcohol from the beginning of June, but since last week, you cannot buy it anymore. And people have not been able to buy cigarettes since March. So we have been on a strict lockdown. So most of the outrage has happened online, where people, express their frustration online. So there has not been any mass gatherings like you have seen in the US and in the UK, where people have marched and taken to the streets. In South Africa, you haven't had that because it is simply not allowed under the lockdown regulations. But certainly we have noticed it and we are aware of it, and there has been outrage, but it has been virtual or online.
Moving on then to the issue of diversity within the legal profession in South Africa. Obviously, we're many years on now from apartheid. And again, I'd be interested to know from you, to what extent is your profession fully diversified, fully reflecting the society in which you live? How do you see that?
Well, it's going to be many years. I mean, we're not there yet. We're not even close. It's almost the same. I don't know if you've watched our rugby team or our cricket team when they play. You can clearly see that the black numbers are not there yet.
Mhm.
So in the advocates profession, the legal profession in general, is the same story. So people of color are still in the minority. I mean, even if you, I don't know if I sent you the list of people who are recommended for silk this year. I think for the Johannesburg area, I mean, in Johannesburg, we have 800, 900 barristers. So 16 were recommended for silk this year. And I think there were only 5 black people on that list. So it tells you that 2/3 of the people on the list were not people of color or black people. So we're still far from where we want to be. And to be honest with you, I think it will be another 20 years before we get to a point where we say, you know, there is diversity in the sense that there is equal representation, not even the scales tipping in favor of one race or the other, just getting to the point where there's equal representation and playing fields are level. It's going to take a while.
Sure. And I think one of the groups that you've been involved in is called Duma Nokwe. Can you tell us a little bit about that group, that organization, what exactly it does, and your part in it?
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you, Duma Nokwe was South Africa's first black barrister or advocate, as we call them this side. And he was involved with the likes of Nelson Mandela. So it's around that time in the 60s, he was involved in the struggle against apartheid. And he was the first black person to be admitted as an advocate in South Africa. But for political reasons and because of what was happening in the country at the time, he was not allowed to develop as an advocate to get to the level of even becoming silk. So my group, Duma Nokwe, is a set of chambers. It was established in 2003. And the move was deliberate because we were members of a group in Sandile, which is a suburb in Johannesburg, where most of the advocates are now situated. But that group we felt was not moving forward in terms of transformation and diversity. And we decided, a few of us in 2003, to start a group called Duma Nokwe, and we decided to name it after the first black advocate in South Africa, because our motto was we wanted a black child to have role models. You know, we wanted a home for advocates of all colors to develop, you know, to the best of their abilities, to allow their potential to develop and take them, you know, as far as it can take them, really. And that group is now 17 years old. And I'm in the management committee of that group because I was one of the founding members. I was still very young because remember, I was only 2 years at the bar when that group was formed. So it is still there, and it has grown into one of the largest groups at the bar. I think at last count, we had 83 to 90 members, if I'm not mistaken, but between 80 and 90.
So clearly it's a very important institution doing very important work.
It is. And also, people had to know about Duma Nokwe and who he was and who he stood for. And one of the things we wanted to do was to leave his legacy, you know, was to be Duma Nokwe and be what he stood for and show the country and the world that this is what Duma Nokwe would have liked for the advocates profession to be like. So we are his representatives in this century.
Sandile, that brings me to the end of my questions. I just wanted to offer you the opportunity, really. Was there any message that you wanted to send out generally to Red Lion Chambers or any of the people that you worked with when you came over in 2006? Any thoughts?
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity. So that was really the purpose of the interview. So when I spoke to, I don't know if I should still call her Justice Dobbs. Is it Dame Dobbs now? What do you call her?
Very much Dame.
Well, I spoke to Dame Dobbs 2 weeks ago just to say to her, I mean, Linda, I call her Linda. Linda, you know, look at how far I come. You know, thank you very much for that opportunity you guys gave me 14 years ago. And she said to me, why don't you tell them yourself, you know? So I'll organize an interview where you'll get the opportunity to thank them personally. So this is that opportunity. So I just want to say to 18 Red Lion, everybody who's there now and those who were there 14 years ago when I was there, thank you very much for the opportunity. This is how far I have come as a barrister, and you've played a part in my journey from a junior advocate to now a senior member of the profession. So I just wanted to thank you. I mean, I learned a lot when I was there. Alistair, I don't know if you remember, I even spent time with some of the admin staff. So people on the ground floor who were doing administration, just to get to understand how it is different from what we do here in terms of running a set of chambers and managing a set of chambers. And that has helped me because I'm not just a barrister. I'm now a member of the management committee in my group, and I'm responsible not just for myself, but for 80 other advocates. And I learned a lot from you guys. I still remember a few people like Rufus and Sarah. Is it Sarah Lawson? I don't know if she's still there. And, you know, a lot of other people who were there who took me to court. And I remember getting to understand your transport system, moving from one court to another, the Crown courts and all those things. So it was an experience for me. I was in my 20s. I was very young back then. I'm 42 years old now. So I really appreciate the experience, and I hope it continues. So I hope it continues. I hope other people get the opportunity, because you may not have known if I didn't mention it, but I benefited, and I know a lot more people will benefit from the experience. So thank you.
Very well said, if I may say so. On behalf of Red Lion Chambers, thank you very much for participating in the interview. And again, congratulations on behalf of Chambers. You've done extremely well. And we're proud as a Chambers to have had a part in that process. So it's been a pleasure interviewing you, Sandile, and I hope to see you again very, very soon.
Thank you. Good to see you. Cheers.